I said I wasn't going to come live or do videos into 4 days. Okay, my fourth day would have been Tuesday. Um, but I felt the need to talk about this. Okay, and it's you are bigger than your adversity. Okay, when we tend to go through certain things in life, and it seems like whatever it is that we may be experiencing, it may appear that that thing is so bigger than us, right? That adversity is so bigger than us. I want you to know that you are bigger than your adversity. Whatever the outcome is, okay, understand that it is not going to kill you. Understand that is seasons in this here life. Okay, life is seasoned. Um and you may be in a winter season right now, but I want you to really understand and get that the winter season that you may be experiencing is going to come a time where as though it will be summer. Okay, things that we tend to go through, sometimes we don't understand like why we are going through this. And one of the things that I tell myself is whatever it is that I'm growing through, I am bigger than this thing. I am bigger than it. And at times you don't even know like how you going to come up out of there. But I'm here to tell you, you will. You will come up out of there. Also, when people do certain things to you in life, right? And you don't, it's like a part of you is like, no, I don't want to do this to this person. You kind of feel sorry for the person. And you may be like, I don't want to do this to the person because I feel sorry for the person or whatever it is like that. Do understand you always have to do what works for you. Because sometimes people are going to do things that works for them, and by you not choosing yourself, you are neglecting yourself. And oftentimes we make statements like, oh, I experienced neglect when I was a kid, and I experienced this. But the truth of the matter is, are you neglecting yourself today? Right? Are you neglecting yourself? And I remember hearing this from Nipsey Hussle, and one of the things he said was, are you willing to go against yourself for the world, or are you willing to go against the world for yourself? And whatever anybody do, for whatever reason, I tell you guys, is a book, The Four Agreements. In that book, it talks about do not take anything personal because it's not impersonal. People tend to do what they do because that's just who they are. Okay. If somebody is, if somebody is a thief, right, you can't expect or say, well, don't steal no more or whatever it is. That's just who they are in this here now moment. That's who they choose to be, right? And so in life, we have to see people for exactly who they are. Okay. We have to see people for exactly who they are, but also understand when people tend to do things to us, victim. Okay. A few days ago, I was, going through this thing, and one of the things that I kept on saying was, you are not a victim. I kept telling myself that. And also, I started doing things that was going to change my perception. Okay. I started I started doing things that was going to change my perception. Hey Daniela, peace here, baby. And I've been really listening to a lot of um Bob Proctor. Okay. And a lot of you guys know, I talked about Bob Proctor. I will always talk about Bob Proctor because he is one of the people that I first invested in myself with. We as though I said, you know what, I deserve change. I'm good enough and I'm going to do something different. I've been around, so I've been getting downloads for me to take time off of social media. So that's pretty much what I been doing. I was supposed to go up into Tuesday, but I just felt the need, like, just for me to make this video. I did a podcast Friday, which was amazing. It'll be out, I think, in November, sometime in November. Um, so whatever it is that you facing, whatever it is that you growing through, you are bigger than that. Okay, I know. It this thing called life, it really takes you having so much faith. Like you having so much faith, you believing in yourself, you seeing that things are working out for you, even in the midst where it appears that things isn't working out for you. You gotta understand they working out for you. And I just been dealing with something recently, and I'm just like, you know what? Whatever happens, it just happens. It also includes you surrendering, because a lot of times we like, I don't know what's the outcome, and sometimes it's like you want to be. Sometimes you want to be a people pleaser because you like, I don't know what's the outcome, and I'm afraid that this person isn't going to comply or cooperate or whatever it is like that. There's something bigger that's on your side. Okay, where is though you don't have to, go to the person or go to the people and say, or put a line in this in an imaginary sand and go off your boundary. Stick to your boundaries. Okay, stick to your boundaries. Keep on going. Keep on growing. And do understand that whatever adversity it is that life is giving you, get the lessons. Get the lessons. And that's one of the things, like I've been going through with myself. Like sometimes we live in regret and we say, well, how could I have done things better? The truth of the matter is the past is the past. Okay. And when I say, how could I do things better? I just look at my life and say, well, if I would have chose me back then instead of, making sure this person, whatever, right? If I would have chose me back then things would have been much different than what they are today. But one of the things that you have to tell yourself is the past is the past. Also, another thing what you want to tell yourself is this. You owe nobody nothing. Let me say it again. You owe nobody anything. Sometimes in life, people feel entitled. They feel like they deserve what it just they just feel so entitled, and at times it could be our children. Okay, they just feel so entitled that you could have boundaries and they like, no, well, I'm still gonna do my own little thing. And one of the things that I tell myself is I prefer peace as to go through any relationship. This is one of the things that I know to be true. So a lot of you guys, you have, and I'm sorry if I'm like, place to place, but I don't want to get too in detailed with whatever it is that I'm growing through, because I believe, whatever you focus on, that's what continues to show up in your life. Um But this is one of the things that you have to understand. And this is one of the things that I understood, when I was going through the whole, mental thing, right? The breakdowns. I started understanding this, that no matter who has a title or a label, okay, if you put the people on a pedestal, your life will be very chaotic. Because sometimes we expect certain things. Sometimes we like, well, this person will never do this, and this person will never do that, and we sort of disregard the signs, the telltale signs, disregard the red flags and everything like that. And when we act like we don't see a thing, I had got this from the words of Miss Yana Van Zandt. One of the things she said was, when we act like we don't see a thing, or act like this thing is not happening, then that's when we suffer, right? Because you have to look at things for what they truly are. And I remember when I would go through these breakdowns, right? And I would be crying, and I, just going through it, growing through it. And one of the things that I so hardly remember was this: you crying and you growing through it, but the other person is not going through that. And so while you are deciding to put this person before you, who's suffering? Who is suffering? Who is, nerves, or, a certain type of way? Who is really going through the trenches because they don't want to piss some people off, or because they don't want to step on some people's toes, or because, they don't want to upset people? It doesn't always understand life is going to continuously give you exactly what you feel. If you feel like this person, it could be your children. If you feel like, well, I don't want to tell my children, or my son or my daughter, I don't want to tell them to leave, right? My apartment. Now suppose if they not abiding by your rules, okay, the rules of the house, right? And then you tell them to leave, okay? Or if you don't tell them to leave, you already know what's the next few months is going to look like, because the prior months, they already showed you, right? Whether they don't disrespect the rules, or they don't disrespect you, or whatever it is. So they already showed you exactly they true, exactly how they feel about you. And so when somebody shows you how they feel about you, you have to do what works for you. Don't feel like, well, I'm going to put this person, because this is my son, or, I'm going to put this person above me, or whatever it is. I'm going to just keep giving them chances, keep giving them chances, keep giving them chances, because somewhere deep down inside, I believe that they are going to change. And you may very well feel that they are going to change. But you don't have to stay in a chaotic situation waiting for somebody to change. The change is up to them. It's not up to you. And by you staying there, the person is not going to change. So sometimes in life, you have to do something that's drastic. You have to do something that maybe you really necessarily don't want to do. But what you have to understand is you have to choose you. And when you choose you, because I know for me, I used to have this feeling like, well, what if the people, if I choose myself, then the people, they not going to be there. Or, whatever, I'm going to be by myself. In life, you have to be willing to stand alone. You have to be willing to be by yourself, to stand up for what's right. And you're not going to suffer because you stood up for what was right, because you had integrity. And at times you're not going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I guarantee you the light is there. It is there. And so to the person that feels, like I don't know, I don't know what to do, and they being hard on themselves and saying, you did what was best for you. Okay. The other day I was going back and forth with myself, and I started talking to myself because I talk to myself. And one of the things that I was telling myself, sometimes we tend to forget certain things. And I was telling myself, I said, no, Deena, go back to the times where as though X, Y, and Z tend to happen. And you done gave this person chance after chance after chance. And they still disregarded you. They still put themselves on a pedestal. So why don't you do the same? I remember I had a passenger when I was doing Lyft. And the passenger got into my car and me and him started talking. And we started talking about family. And one of the things he said was, he was saying like, how family sometimes will try to, put you on a guilt trip or whatever it is like that. And he said, but who fork is that? If you fall for the guilt trip, like who fork is that? That wouldn't be their fork. That would be yours. And I was listening to what he was saying, and he was like, in other words, we show the universe exactly how we would want to be treated. If you look at yourself and say, I deserve respect, I deserve boundaries, and I often say, you cannot have high self-esteem if you don't have boundaries. And the boundaries, a lot of times, see, when I first started this journey, my whole perception was, this is going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. This is going to be a walk in the park. Because sometimes we tend to think that the ones or the people that is going to do stuff is the people that we don't know, like the strangers, right? But then sometimes it's people that is close to us. And it's not impersonal, right? It's not impersonal. But also I want to say to the person that, you may have resentment or whatever it is like that towards someone. And even though I'm going through this, I wish the person well. Like I really wish them well. Because one thing that I know is no one can stop you from achieving whatever it is life has for you. That's one. And then two, while you are getting the lessons from life and you are learning, okay, the other person, they have a choice to get lessons or get the lessons and see why their lives are going a certain type of way. But whether they get the lessons or not, that's neither here nor there. That has absolutely nothing to do with me. But I always been and I always will be a person that gets lessons from life. And once I get the lesson, I know I won't repeat the course because I got the lesson. See, a lot of times we like, I don't want to step on this person's toes. I don't want this person to be upset with me. Do this make me a bad parent if I do X, Y, and Z? Make sure you're choosing you. Make sure you are choosing you. If I knew if I knew what I know now, is I would have did things so differently. But it's no need to cry over spilt milk. But you have to understand that if you don't choose you, then your life is going to be very, very chaotic. It's going to be filled with so much pain because You didn't choose you. And then people reflect back to us because sometimes we say, well, I don't like the way this person did X, Y, and Z, or, the way this person treated me. But the truth of the matter is, they just reflecting back to you how you treated yourself, how you put them first before you put yourself. And when you start understanding that from now on, I am going to choose myself, I am going to do the things that works for me, then you do the things that works for you. And choose you so hard that the people who's not, or that's not genuinely like in your life, they just fall off. And it could be anybody. It could be family, it could be children, it could be anybody. They just fall off. Like if they have other alternative motives, like why they are in your life, and because now you are choosing you, and now they're like, they feel so entitled. Make sure you keep choosing you. And then they just fall off or whatever. Also understand this. To forgive someone, it does not mean that you have to have a relationship with them. Understand that. Like, to forgive someone, forgiveness is never about the other person. It's always about you. And I was thinking, I forgive the person for all the stuff that he is doing. I forgive them. I forgive them because one, I know it's not impersonal. I know this is just who they are, right? And then two, um, you gotta understand that it's greatness within you. No matter what it is that's showing up, no matter what adversity it is showing up, you got greatness within you, and things are going to work out. No matter what, they going to work out. Why? Because they always do. And you may not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And one of the things I'm gonna tell you is to just keep telling yourself each and every day, things are working out in my favor. Things are working out in your favor, because they are. They are. Even if it appears a certain type of way, they working out in your favor. But one of the things I'm wholeheartedly is going to say to the person that have children, and you keep putting your children on a pedestal, you doing yourself a disservice, and then you also doing your children a disservice, because that's not how the real world is. And when they get out into the real world, they will suffer, because other people is going to make sure that they are good, or that they're on a pedestal themselves. And then your children may feel, like, well, I always, they may feel entitled, or may go through some type of breakdown because, the real world isn't doing the things that you did for your children. And so one of the things as a parent that I can say is make sure you keep boundaries. Make sure, because when you have boundaries, okay, especially for your children, it lets them see that having boundaries is okay. Okay, like when they leave your house or whatever, it lets them see that having boundaries is okay. And then they don't feel like, well, I'm going to allow somebody to do X, Y, and Z because this person is my girlfriend, or this person is my wife, or whatever. So I'm going to allow them to do X, Y, and Z because I have no boundaries, because I don't respect myself enough to know that I am worthy of showing people or telling people exactly how they are to play a role in my life, right? So make sure you have boundaries, and also understand that forgiveness, it never comes from, it's never about the other person. It's always about you. I remember hearing Wayne Dyer say, oftentimes we don't die from the snake bite, we die from the venom, right? And although it is like a part of me is like, why would this person do this? This person know what type of situation I'm in and all this other stuff. And they just don't care. And the crazy part is, because you have boundaries, right? People feel very they feel very entitled. They feel like you shouldn't have boundaries. And because you have boundaries, it's like almost they want you to pay because you have boundaries, which is absurd. They want you to like sort of suffer because you have boundaries. Always do what works for you. Always do what works for you. And understand that things are working out for you. They working out in your favor. And also understand that things are going to get better because they always do. As long as you are doing the right thing, things are always going to get better. I remember I have a aunt, right, and who had custody of me. Who had custody of me. And I remember as a kid, right, like she would go to the courthouse because at that time I was running away. And I remember like everything always worked out for her. Like, it almost felt like the judge was like on her side, or whoever was on her side. And as I look back, it was because she was doing the right thing. Right? Is As I have gotten older, it was because she was doing the right thing. It was because she chose her and was like, you know what, I'm not going through this, whatever it is like that. It's because she was doing the right thing. So as long as you know in your heart you're doing the right thing, honey, you have nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. Just keep on doing you, keep on growing, and keep them boundaries. Keep them boundaries. Because this is one thing that I know is this. I prefer boundaries and peace of mind as opposed to someone in my life that don't respect my boundaries. Like I prefer being by myself and keeping up my boundaries. And if I have to be by myself, like to keep my boundaries, if I have to stand alone, if I have to, just walk alone, like I prefer that. I prefer that as opposed to having chaos in my life. And you have to come to a point and a place where as though you choose you and you so comfortable with who you are. You so comfortable with being by yourself. And that was, I never had an issue with being by myself. Like I never, as a kid, like I never had an issue, and I never was a part like of big crowds and stuff like that. And I'm so grateful for that because, it gives me the ability to say, nope, I choose me. It gives me the ability to say, nope, I deserve better. It gives me the ability to understand that sometimes in life you just have to stand by yourself. It gives me the ability to know that my boundaries matter. And it also gives me the ability to understand, like, at least I didn't sell it out. Like, at least, I have chosen me, and at least I didn't sell out on my boundaries. And to me, that's so powerful. Is really powerful because, like I said before, whenever you don't choose you and you put people above you and on a pedestal, and they reflect back to you exactly what it is, how they feel, then you have to start looking at yourself and saying, well, why didn't I choose myself at that time? and start looking at how you can start choosing yourself now from this point on. And so I hope you guys got something from this. I know the video, it was like probably, spoken, speaking in code or whatever. Um, but understand it's going to get better. A part of me like maybe I should talk about it. So my oldest son, okay, who is 20 years old. And when he was about 15 years old, we would have these issues. Matter of fact, even before then, when he was a kid, right? We would have issues far as him. I would have issues far as him, being hard headed. And I said this prior, me having children, with guys that was in the street, like selling drugs or whatever it was. Just me looking for love, right? And looking for my father, okay, in these guys. Because that's what we tend to do. And so, from an early age, children, they could be hard headed, right? And so, um, so they could be hard headed. And I would sort of try to buy my children love, right? Not you. Well, I would, since they fathers wasn't in their lives, my two oldest children, since they fathers wasn't in their lives, they was in and out of jail because that's who I chose. Okay, um, they fathers was in and out of jail. So what I did was I would try to compensate it. So I would try to buy them whatever it is that they wanted. I would spoil them, just so they didn't feel that, just so they didn't feel like, like they father didn't want them, or just so they didn't feel not neglected, but just so they didn't feel a certain type of way, right? And I wanted them to feel that they was just as good, okay? And it was some things that I had did as a parent, like wrong, right? Like, beatings and stuff like that. And a part of me would be like, well, this is the way, I was brought up, whatever it was like that. And me and my oldest son, we would go through these things. Whereas though, I tell him not to do something, he'll do it anyway. And I get it because, I was a kid too. And so when he turned about 14, right? Like he got into this relationship. But before that, he was, he was in a relationship with this girl at, at his old school and things of that nature. And it was a thing, right? Because the girl was saying like she wanted to have babies and stuff like that. And he was fairly young, probably like 13, 14. And, I spoke to him about it and stuff like that. And this is the point where, as though I always say, and I love my son to the life of me, okay? But he will not be, or nobody, none of my children, or no one outside my existence will be on a pedestal, above me. Like you have to see that you come first. You have to see that. And one of the things they say on the airplane, like if it's going down or whatever, they say you put your oxygen mask on first. They don't say put the children's mask on first or put your neighbor's mask on first. They say you put your mask on first and then you can help somebody else get their mask on. But if you can't goddamn breathe, honey, what could you do? Right? And so so my oldest son, right, who's now 20, 21, one of those ages. So he had, got in a relationship with this girl. Then, him and the girl broke up. So then we moved. And then he got in another relationship with this other girl. who they now have a child, with one another. And I remember before, like when he was about 15, right? He would do stuff. Like I would tell him, like, don't go to that girl house at nighttime, whatever it was like that. Sneaking in that girl house, whatever it is, to be with the girl or whatever. And so I would talk to him and stuff like that. That went in one ear and out the other. And I remember one night I was meditating and I was saying, I put out into the ether, like, why am I going through this? And one of the things is that control, right? Like me being controlling. And basically, like, I need to surrender. Like, this is his life. Let him make his choices. And he would have to deal with the consequences of the choices. Like everybody in life, none of us are exempt. And so, um, it was things that he was doing in the house. Like, I say, come home after school, whatever, just so I could, make sure you good. He would do the opposite. So a few times I would be like, if you can't listen to the rules of the house, then you're gonna have to leave, right? And so I would let him stay out, okay? And so that happened a few times. And then after that, later on, it always felt like he was going to listen or do whatever it is that he wanted to do. And it's no issue. You want to do whatever it is you want to do, but you can't do whatever you want to do here. Okay. And so we would have these, conversations about how am I being a mother towards him and stuff like that. What both of my oldest children, because at this time my youngest children, they was fairly young, and they would, my oldest children would pretty much say exactly how they felt, right? Like I'm being controlling, whatever. So what I would say is, all right, well, let's meet somewhere in the middle, okay? And let me know. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. So if you saying I'm controlling, if you saying, I don't give you freedom, let's come in the middle and see how we could come up with an agreement. So that meant that, I give them a curfew. Then I see that they not listening to the curfew. So then I'm like, oh, so this just means that you pretty much want to do whatever it is that you want to do. So then it be consequences or punishment, whatever. And then he won't abide by the punishment. So then it came to a point where as though I would tell him he couldn't stay here. My oldest son, right? Because he just wasn't listening. He just wanted to do what he wanted to do. And so about 2 years ago, right? My oldest son started working. I believe it was 2 years ago. He started working. And I told him, I said, listen, since you are working, you could help out paying the internet, right? Now, at the time, the internet, it was like the cable bill at that time, I think it was like 100 and something. So I said, you could pay $80. You could put $80 down. So the girl who he's with, at this time, she was pregnant. So he went and told her, like, oh, my mother want me to pay whatever it is like that. So when he got paid, he started, first of all, he went and told the girl, like, I wanted him to pay the $80. So I said, he got paid the week that I told him, the week of, I told him he had to pay. So I said, instead of you paying this week, you could pay your next paycheck. So he agreed. So when the time came for him to pay, he went and told the girl, and I guess the girl, I don't know the conversation, but I know he said he didn't get paid. So I went to where he was working at to see if they got paid. And the lady at the store was like, yeah, we got paid, whatever. So then I went to my oldest son and said, why did you lie? And I was like, you can't stay here. Like, you can't, you don't even want to help out. Now, mind you, and this is for the parents that feels like, well, I want to give my child everything. or I want to, spoil them and all this other stuff. It does not work. And I remember when my oldest children was younger, I would constantly hear, don't spoil them, because if you spoil them, pretty much they grow up and give you their ass to kiss. And so my oldest son, he didn't pay. He didn't pay the $80. And so then I told him, I said, well, you can't stay. If you can't, you don't even want to help out. And you listening to somebody else, you don't want to help out, you can't stay here. So then he went and stayed with his friends. And then we started talking again. And then when he came back, he had paid the $80. Right? And every time it has, now I'm on Section 8. So it's like, if you are on Section 8, or if you going towards, aiming towards Section 8, trying to get Section 8, if your child is not going to school, but they are working, they are going to have to pay rent, right? Your rent is going to increase. It's going to go up because they're not going to school. And so I told my oldest son, I said, as long as you in school, you don't have to, my rent is not going to get increased. But if you are in school, as long as you are in school, my rent won't get increased. But if you're not going to school, my rent is going to be increased. And then you definitely going to have to pay that remaining balance. What I pay is from, my rent being, because I'm just doing, I'm doing videos and stuff like that. I'm not, per se working. And so I told him this. And so my oldest son was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to school, whatever it is like that. He stopped going to school, right? So I contacted the Section 8 office, let them know, like, my son, he's not going to school, whatever it is like that. So the lady at the Section 8, like, oh, well, we need, in order for us to remove him off the lease, we need proof of his change of address. And so many times my oldest son kept saying, I'm going to change my address. I'm going to change my address. I'm going to change my address. And he won't change his address. Knowing that is either one or two things, right? Like either it would have been different if my son was like, if I could have trust him, right? And it's not trusting him, it's me really trusting myself. Because if I was to let him stay on the lease, and he don't even live here, he been moved out. Well, I told him that he had to go, and then I let him come back, and that was the issue, because me letting him come back, and then that was the issue. And so now he's been out of here probably for like a year. When he had got shot, he had came here and was here for like a week and some change. But because of the rules of me telling him like, oh, you gotta, clean up on yourself, he decided, no, I said you could go over to your girlfriend's house, because the girlfriend lived across the street. So I said you could go over to your girlfriend's house, and then you could come back here, because I just felt like I'm sick of talking. I'm sick of keep reiterating myself, and it's really not getting anywhere. And so now this whole thing is, you're not living here. Change your address. And every time he say he's going to change his address, he never do. And now Section 8 is like, well, if he don't change his address, like, he's going to have to stay on the lease. But my whole thing is, he's working and not going to school. So my rent is going to go up. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, if he reneged on the $80, okay, if my rent goes up, he'll do the same as that goddamn thing. And so I'm just like, really, like, I don't know, but I know things gonna work out, because they always do. This is all I keep telling myself. But with that being said, Stick to your boundaries. Stick to them. Even if you like, I know this person is going to be upset. See, if I would have stuck to my boundaries back then and just would have been like, no, you don't want to listen to the rules, you just can't stay here, as opposed to letting him come back, then things wouldn't be the way they are today. But with that being said, I love you guys. Make sure you're rocking out, believing in yourself, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.